Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again, and we've got a weird parallel with last year. We talked about the TV movie pilot of The Spirit. The Spirit was very much a superhero who was really more of a pulp hero, fitting more in with that mold than the publishers had intended him to be. Here, however, we have a pulp hero who really fits as more of a superhero than many of his contemporaries. And we're looking at his big-budget movie adaptation today. Let's back up a bit, because I call him a pulp hero, but he did not start in magazines. Sort of. In 1930, the company Street and Smith decided to boost sales of their detective magazine by creating a radio show that adapted the stories. The Shadow was created as the host and narrator of the stories, your Crypt Keeper or Rod Serling or whatnot. However, the performance was so good that people started asking for the magazine by the Shadow's name rather than the actual name of it. Thus, the company commissioned writer Walter B. Gibson to create an actual ongoing series about the Shadow, forming the actual character. His backstory, his abilities, his villains and allies. It was very proto-superhero stuff, even with him having a full-on secret identity. Admittedly, while the Shadow has always looked incredibly cool and stylish with the hat, the heavy coat and cape, the red scarf, I have always been bothered by the fact that traditionally the scarf does not cover his nose. I mean, I can make a joke about him being like the people who think that just wearing a mask over the mouth is sufficient for COVID or any other diseases, but this was annoying to me even back when I first learned about the Shadow. Oh my god, where did Linkara go? Who is this mysterious figure who has taken his place? Surprise, it was me! I mean, say what you will about a domino mask or glasses or any other small facial covering, you might as well only cover the chin and call it a day if you're not going to take it seriously. It doesn't help that a lot of traditional artwork for the Shadow depicts him as having a very distinct, large nose that would make him instantly recognizable without the scarf. Again, he looks really cool. It's just I would prefer at least half of his face covered and not just like a quarter of it. Anyway, aside from the magazine, the Shadow eventually got a full-on radio show and several film serial adaptations, but we're not really concerned with those today. No, the Patron had us jumping ahead to the 90s in the film adaptation of the character starring Alec Baldwin, who was apparently screenwriter David Coep's own choice to play the role. Longtime viewers of the show know that years and years and years ago, I actually teased that I was going to review some issues of one of the Shadow's comic adaptations over the years, but it didn't materialize. So I am only a casual fan of the character at best. I became aware of the Shadow back when I was still living with my parents and their cars got Sirius XM radio on them. One of the satellite channels played old radio plays, and I had a blast listening to the Shadow whenever it was on. Or occasionally old horror plays. What the Devil from Lights Out remains embedded in my memory to this day. And lo and behold, as I was starting out the show, I discovered the existence of comic books based on the Shadow. A ton of them over the years. But most especially for the purposes of this show, that time the pulp hero got his head cut off and stuck on a robot body. So why the hell didn't I end up doing a review on this? Well, first, it's part 6 of a storyline, and I didn't have any of the other parts. 2, it was also the end of the book, so it was really the culmination of 18 other comics leading up to it, plus a mini-series before it. 3, I recall the book itself not even seeming to acknowledge how bafflingly ridiculous it was, and it felt hard to riff on. I always figured I'd get back around and finally cover it, and then never did. And thus here we are. So let's talk the basic premise here, at least from the old stuff. Originally, the Shadow was Kent Allard, a World War I veteran who faked his death in Guatemala to help in a war against criminals, encountering the Xinca tribe, who believed him to be supernatural. 1930s casual racism. Upon returning to New York, he took on a variety of alter egos, most notably Lamont Cranston, a rich playboy who within the stories is a real person, but he jets around everywhere in the world so the Shadow can pretend to be him and use his money and resources. From there, he deals with criminals through theatricality and deception, magic tricks, chemical compounds, M1911 pistols, real stage magician fare. When the series went to radio, the Kent Allard identity was dropped entirely, and he'd just always been Lamont Cranston. But he does use disguises and whatnot. There, he used his money much like Batman, traveling the world to learn and become an accomplished crime fighter. Though while Batman learned how to hide in the shadows, the Shadow learned how to just plain turn invisible thanks to a yogi priest. Hinduism. It's just magic, I guess. We don't have to explain it. Do you think other countries where Christianity isn't the dominant religion do that? Like, they have fictional characters who travel to America to learn from a Catholic priest or something how to walk on water or whatever? Oh, I'm sorry, apparently he just hypnotizes people to cloud their minds so they don't see him. And in fact, he apparently said that this is not magic, but based on science.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Okay, I think that's enough for this intro. Let's dig into the 1994 movie adaptation of The Shadow and see what they did with it.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man, punch, sporadically a grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
The intro sequence is cool, slowly panning back on each letter of the title, heavily in shadows. It's simple but effective. We open in Tibet. The year is unclear, but most likely around the late 1910s, early 1920s, given details in the film. The always awesome James Hong is dragged in front of an opium drug lord, apparently playing a drug lord himself who killed 3 of this guy's men. We very quickly learn that said drug lord is Alec Baldwin in a terrible wig. And while he's actually Lamont Cranston, here in Tibet he goes by Ying Ko. Hong manages to take one of Ying Ko's men as a hostage to try to escape, but our hero orders his guards to just shoot through him. That night, that day for night. This is an especially bad day for night shot because I'm pretty sure they just reused a shot from 2 minutes earlier where there are workers picking opium seeds and you can still see them. Yes, they might be guards in the night shot, but you didn't even move the camera over a few feet to get a different angle. Anyway, point is, Ying Ko has what seems to be a dream of a figure before he's kidnapped and brought to a temple.
You call that a temple? No!
Now, personally, I call that a base for Cobra. He wonders where the place came from since he couldn't see it a second ago. The goon saying that a clouded mind sees nothing. But, there was also that heavy fog there. Sometimes it's not a clouded mind, it's just the clouds. Inside the temple, he meets with the Tulku.
I am your teacher.
Do you have any idea who you just kidnapped?
Well, you do kind of look like Tommy Wiseau. He knows Ying Ko's real name, saying that he also knows that he has always struggled against his own black heart and lost. More to the point, the Tulku says this.
You know what evil lurks in the hearts of men, for you have seen that evil in your own heart.
If you're not familiar with the character, who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The Shadow knows, is the tagline of the character. David Coop said that that was the basis for the character's arc and the backstory that he's inventing for this film. The idea being that the Shadow knows what evil is in men's hearts because he himself has experienced it in his own heart. It's an interesting idea and a good basis for a film version of the character. Problem is, the movie doesn't really do anything with it. It'll pay lip service to it later, but not really explore it beyond dreams. Anyway, the Tulku says that he's forcing a redemption arc on him.
I'm not looking for redemption.
You have no choice.
A dramatization of Kylo Ren versus Disney. Ying Ko grabs a nearby dagger to try to attack the Tulku, but the dagger is a furba, a Tibetan Buddhist dagger with a face on it, and this one has a mind of its own, as the face repeatedly growls at him, then flies around, stabs him, and bites him for good measure before the Tulku recalls it. And then this. Wow! We're not even 10 minutes in, and the movie has run out of budget to show us the training and redemption. I'm genuinely curious if this is in the screenplay, like just a little paragraph describing all of this character development happens off screen. Enjoy this exposition instead. It says that the Tulku taught Lamont how to cloud men's minds through force of concentration, leaving visible the only thing he can never hide. His shadow. The first 9 or so minutes of this movie could be cut entirely. Leave his backstory as exposition he gives to Lamont's love interest, something the audience discovers alongside her, and it'd be a stronger movie for it. Doing it like this is completely asinine. I get why, to some degree, we have this beginning, because it's good to see Lamont being evil to contrast with how he is later, but by having this crawl say, oh, by the way, he's a good guy now, just FYI, it renders the entire thing moot. Because if you weren't going to show us his struggle, his redemption, his guilt, or a desire to change, then why even bother showing him as a murderous asshole before? Him being afraid of who he used to be is supposed to be one of his character points later, but by not bothering to show the work necessary to go from one to the other, it's unsatisfying for the audience and doesn't resonate like it should. And I'm just going to get this out of the way now. The movie is actually not bad in my opinion. But it's not great, and stuff like this opening really hurts it and drags it down. But let's actually get into the good stuff. 7 years later, Cranston has returned to New York, where some mobsters are about to throw a guy off what I think is the Brooklyn Bridge. I tried to look it up, and don't get mad at me if I got it wrong. Point is, the bridge is apparently very deserted at this time of night, as this poor guy, a scientist named Dr. Tam, is about to be killed for having accidentally spotted the mobsters doing illegal things. They have literally given him cement overshoes, though fortunately he is saved by the shadows doing one of his signature activities, a creepy laugh that surrounds the area.
Who's there?
Sorry, I just keep pushing women off this bridge and Spider-Man inexplicably shows up every time to save them while yelling, "No!" It's hilarious. The Shadow is apparently after this guy for killing a policeman. After expending all his handgun's bullets, the mobster goes for a Tommy gun and begins a methodical, systematic approach to trying to locate his laughing opponent.
Well, that'll stop him.
The Shadow proceeds to beat the crap out of him, telling him to confess to his murder, and gotta say, these smoky effects for his punches look really damn good. Like, honest to God, this is an awesome way of depicting becoming only briefly visible during the action. The movie lost me at the exposition crawl, but it quickly got me back with this scene. This stuff, the laughing, the scaring the criminal into confessing to their crime, this is 100% like The Shadow, and we end it with the gorgeous reveal of the outfit. And he teleports a cape onto himself between shots. I don't mind, it looks even better with said cape. He's also very obviously wearing a prosthetic nose because Alec Baldwin does not have that nose. That being said, we'll see a shot later that reveals that even this more accurate appearance is an affectation. Just another layer of the hypnosis so he looks nothing like Baldwin. Which is just kind of baffling. So like he's hypnotizing people into thinking he's invisible, but also that he looks like a completely different guy at the same time. Like, is it all one big hypnotic command? Like, you will believe that I am invisible, but also if you do see me, I am this guy with a cool scarf and a huge nose. He frees Dr. Tam from the cement by shooting at said cement, which I'm pretty sure would not actually do that, but whatever. If I wanted realism, I wouldn't be watching the movie about the psychic Shadow Man. The Shadow doesn't have a Batmobile, instead a taxi driven by his agent Mo, played by Peter Boyle. He and Mo explain that Dr. Tam now owes his life to the Shadow, and he's going to make use of him. He has now become one of his agents and informants. He has them all over the city, granting Tam a ring that will act as both a signal device and a visual cue to other agents that he works for the Shadow. He also gives them a code phrase.
The sun is shining. You will respond. But the ice is slippery.
You will then comically flail around as if you are slipping on ice. It's not part of the code phrase, I just think it'll be funny. It's why I'm always laughing. Tam does ask how he knew what was going on with him.
The Shadow knows.
I actually mean this thing. I'm like Toucan Sam. I follow my nose and it points me in the right direction like a compass. After dropping him off at home, Mo just briefly explains his deal. That like Dr. Tam, he also owes his life to the Shadow. I'm sure if this had actually been successful enough for a long-running franchise, we would have learned more about their relationship. As is, he's just kind of a minor supporting character. Barely the Alfred to the Shadow's Batman. Anyway, that's enough crime fighting for the evening. The Shadow transforms back into Cranston to go to the Cobalt Club, a frequent hangout in the original stories, and meet with his uncle, played by Jonathan Winters, who also happens to be the chief of police. The chief complains how Lamont is always so late to their dinners together, despite him seemingly not doing anything with his life. Then rants to him about how the Shadow keeps interfering in police affairs. As such, he's planning on putting together a task force to deal with him.
You're not going to appoint a task force.
I'm not going to appoint a task force.
Our hero, everyone, hypnotizes and mind controls innocent people to suit his whims. Yeah, protecting himself and all, but still, feels like a dick move. In any case, where Lamont's actual attention is focused is this woman who's walked in. Margot Lane, a socialite whom the commissioner doesn't care for, since apparently she's weird and can hear voices. However, she's hot, so Lamont is all into that. He buys her a drink, and we quickly learn that she has some limited psychic powers.
Since I was a little girl with my cousin Harry, I could hear what he was thinking, just pick the thoughts right out of his head.
Made for a really weird winter in the Overlook Hotel, but still I had fun. After dropping her off at home, Lamont tells Mo that sadly he can't really see her again. Her innate psychic powers could threaten his secret identity. That night, Lamont has a spooky vision of a CGI head that is a considerably less impressive effect than the invisibility smoke, but points for hiding it well in the fire. Laughing at him, and he realizes someone is coming. We cut to the Museum of Natural History, where the curator is informed by one of his workers about a sarcophagus that's been delivered to them unexpectedly from Tibet. Examining it, the thing is made of pure silver and has a Latin inscription on it. Made in Tibet. Well, yeah, obviously. No, it actually reads, "The power of God on earth, the seal of the Emperor of Mankind," which the curator realizes is referring to Genghis Khan, that this is his legendary silver coffin. Because if there's one language we associate with the Mongolian who conquered most of Asia, it's Latin. The curator and his assistant go off to make a phone call, instructing the security guard, played by Ethan Phillips, to not open the sarcophagus whatsoever. He agrees, but then he hears one of the locks open. Ugh, god damn it, Neelix. And so the coffin fully opens, and this figure emerges. Well, he doesn't look anything like John Wayne. Khan here tells the guard to join him or die, and of course he refuses. And then Khan manages to psychically get the guard to shoot himself in the head. The curator and assistant return upon hearing the gunshot, not spotting Khan hiding with some mannequins before escaping. "I know I have mind control powers that I could use against you guys too, but I decided to hide and run away! Genghis Khan out!" So were there air holes in that thing? Over to the Federal Building, we meet Margot's father, Dr. Lane, played by Ian McKellen, barely putting on an American accent, who's talking to a businessman and other scientist, Claymore, played by Tim Curry, who's putting on a Tim Curry accent, and complaining that Dr. Lane could be using his energy research for military applications, but of course he's uninterested. Margot comes to see her dad, but Claymore wants to know why she hasn't returned any of his calls.
It's because I don't like you.
You're lost, Margot. You're turning down Tim Curry for Alec Baldwin. He also makes note that he's finished his beryllium sphere, but enough of that. Time for more fun with the Khan, as he apparently took a cab out to a spot in the city, but is upset to learn the driver is making a note of where he's dropping him off, not wanting there to be any record of his destination. As such, he uses his mind control powers to make the guy drive into a gas truck. So, do you think he would have paid the fare if not for the record, or is he a big enough asshole to have just planned on using mind control to make him think he paid? The next day, a cop who's an agent of the Shadow makes a report of the security guard's death and sends it via pneumatic tube all across the city to this guy, who I guess just spends all his time at this desk waiting for messages to arrive in the tubes. Lamont is summoned to the Sanctum, aka his bat cave out in the city. He's informed about the security guard's death, but it really makes no difference, since Khan is already inside the Sanctum to greet Lamont. He reveals that he's actually Shiwan Khan, the last living descendant of Genghis Khan, and a recurring foe from the original stories, who intends to follow in the footsteps of his ancestor and conquer and stuff. He also says that he knows exactly who Lamont is, that he's actually a great admirer from his days as Yinko, and is coming here out of respect to offer him a chance to join him as a fellow conqueror. What's more, he also trained under the Tulku to gain the psychic abilities, but the Tulku was unable to redeem him the same way he did Lamont.
Hey, would you happen to have some American bourbon? I have a bit of a taste for it.
See, that's pure evil right there. He even asked politely and offers to pay for it. The relationship between these two is actually a really fun part of the movie. Yes, Shiwan Khan is a murderous bastard, but since he sees Lamont as a colleague and equal, he's respectful and courteous and making legit offers of friendship. Sure, he knows he may have to kill Lamont, but it's not his primary goal. It makes for a very refreshing, entertaining villain. But yeah, he says he plans to make the world grovel at his feet in 3 days, but of course won't reveal his plan. He does give him a unique coin as payment for the bourbon when Lamont refuses to join him. Another reason he's evil? Didn't leave a tip. Lamont goes to see Dr. Tam to have the coin examined, posing as just another agent of the Shadow. There's a lot of technobabble thrown around, but the big point is that the metal the coin is made of could be used to help create an atomic bomb, though it would require a beryllium sphere, like the one Claymore is making, and whatever the hell Dr. Lane is making. And soon we see Lane being psychically called out onto the balcony outside his lab. Man, advertising is weirdly effective. I really want to smoke a bearded guy now. At the Cobalt Club, Margot confronts the commissioner, saying she's trying to get the police to check in on her father since he's been acting weirdly distant and refusing to take any visitors, including her. When she mentions that the energy research he's been doing is along the same lines as the stuff necessary for the atomic bomb, Lamont decides to go investigate himself, sneaking away like Batman. Don't be surprised that I'm making so many Batman comparisons. Well, obviously the Shadow predates Batman, the movie itself feels like it could take place in the same universe as the Tim Burton Batman movies. There's just a general style that they were clearly drawing inspiration from for it. And that's not a criticism. They clearly took the right lessons from that movie for said style, and it really works here. Margot manages to catch up with Lamont, and he tries to use his hypnosis on her to make her forget about him, but her innate psychic abilities protect her from the attempt, leaving her more confused than anything else. Khan's minions get to the Federal Building before the Shadow, all dressed up in Mongol gear and armed with crossbows, because they're kind of on a theme here. The Shadow fights one in particular, knocking him off the balcony ledge to his death.
Next time, you get to be on top.
Well,
He fights the others, but thanks to Jesse Ventura here, I'm not kidding, this actor, Nils Allen Stewart, played Jesse Ventura in a TV movie about the guy. They're able to keep the Shadow subdued long enough to escape. Khan uses her father to lure Margot to the lab, and like her father, she heads out onto the balcony. It isn't Khan doing that. Llama cigarettes really are just that enticing. Khan uses his hypnosis to send Margot after Lamont. She's able to get inside his house, but she mistakenly shoots at a mirror instead. She only had the one bullet and probably didn't really have any instruction beyond that, so Lamont is able to snap her out of it pretty quickly. However, she's able to deduce from all this that he's the Shadow. Despite his constant attempts to get her to leave, he agrees to try to find her father. He heads to his sanctum, but soon finds another of Khan's goons tailing him. Mind you, said goon is not exactly inconspicuous, what with him, you know, still wearing the Mongolian armor and all. Lamont shakes him off, but then starts tailing the warrior conveniently right into Chinatown around the corner. Following the guy into a restaurant, Lamont and Khan meet again.
By the way, you sent Margot Lane to kill me.
Just wanted to let you know what you did. Thought you might want to know that. Khan explains he didn't want him dead, that he actually sent Margot off to be killed, which, you know, would have been really embarrassing if she had actually managed to kill Lamont. Khan reveals that he has the Tulku's furba, and that he killed the Tulku with it. I think the idea is that he's trying to get Lamont mad enough to give into his instincts, his violent and evil attitude from back when he was a drug lord and whatnot. You know, real seduced by the dark side of the Force kind of thing. Still, you can imagine how Lamont feels about his old master being murdered. However, Khan's not stupid. Lamont tries to use the furba on him, but he still can't control the thing. Still, most guns are a little more open to being used, so Lamont hypnotizes one of the warriors to hand over his pistol. Khan and Lamont shoot each other, with the bullets hitting midair. I love how both of them are shocked by that, as if it wasn't in the script or something. Lamont chases Khan, but he disappears around a vacant lot, to Lamont's confusion. He returns to his mansion and finds Margot, inviting her to stay the night in a guest room, but wants her gone in the morning. Lamont then has a dream of going to Margot's room and ripping off his own face to reveal Khan. It is, once again, a very good effect, and we'll talk about it in the conclusion. Margot forces Lamont to accept her help in hunting down her father. After a scene where Khan murders a sailor who insults him, to remind us he's the bad guy, I guess, Margot tells Lamont about Claymore's beryllium sphere and they split up, Lamont wanting Margot to look into the history of the vacant lot. He tracks Claymore to some water testing chamber? I don't know. Point is, he reveals he's already given Khan the beryllium sphere, and that he's not under hypnosis, but wants to rule with Khan, and manages to lock the shadow inside the chamber as it fills with water. Lamont has to psychically call Margot to his aid before he drowns. He also got shot in the shoulder during that, and between that and the various stabbings and other injuries, it's a wonder his arms aren't completely torn to shreds by the end of this. Anyway, Margot saves him, though he's not in great shape. She's able to telepathically see some of his history of raiding and pillaging and murdering and all.
Do you have any idea what it's like to have done things you could never forgive yourself for?
My boat.
While Khan as Dr. Lane and Claymore begin assembling the bomb, we learn that he's already started announcing his intention to blow up New York if his demands aren't met. Oh my god! Contest delay choice of new city chairman? Anyway, Margot runs downstairs to talk with Lamont.
Morning, Russell.
Also, who the hell are you? Like, when the hell did Lamont have a butler? I thought maybe this was Margot's place, but no, this is Lamont's living room from earlier. Anyway, Margot's investigation into the vacant lot reveals that it used to have the Hotel Monolith on it. It was supposed to have been finished a decade ago, but then never opened due to the owner going bankrupt and killing himself. 6 years ago, it got bought by a Far East investor, but there's no actual record of it being torn down, and no one remembers when it happened, just that it did. Lamont figures it out. Khan was somehow able to hypnotize the entire city, clouded everyone's minds so that they think the hotel isn't there and that it was torn down. Not sure how that included him, given his own abilities, but kudos on foreshadowing this at the start with the hidden temple. But yeah, Khan has been hiding in plain sight this way, and Lamont comes up with a plan, telling Margot that she and Mo will get instructions for that night. First, if everyone's minds are clouded, I'm gonna need a lot of Claritin. Khan activates the bomb, setting it for 2 hours with the intention of leaving the city an hour before it goes off. As the agents of the Shadow are given their instructions, our hero enters the hotel to give us some more cool visuals. Khan senses his approach and orders Claymore and his guards to kill him. Claymore, a coward, splits off from the other guards only to be confronted by the Shadow, and comedically spins in a circle as he fires his Tommy gun everywhere. The Shadow then makes Claymore jump out a window into the lobby instead of focusing on finding the bomb, because the Shadow is kind of petty, I guess.
You know what I love about this job? The excitement.
Still, beats being an Uber driver. The Shadow confronts Khan, but he apparently decided to install a big spinny tilt-a-whirl on the floor of his throne room since he activates it to knock Lamont over and sick the furba on him. Another shoulder stab and getting tossed around causes the Shadow to lose his concentration, so his appearance reverts to normal. However, Lamont is able to refocus himself and finally take control of the furba, turning it on Khan and stabbing him in the gut. And that sort of thing is enough to break the hypnotic hold on the city, freeing Dr. Lane and exposing the hotel to everyone. Lamont chases after him as Margot and Mo enter the hotel and reunite with her father. Mo is sent to call the police while Margot and her dad go to disarm the bomb. Unfortunately, the initial disarming instead accelerates the timer so that instead of an hour, they have 2 minutes. And then it accidentally drops from the ceiling so that it continually rolls down the hotel until getting stopped at an elevator shaft.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
They finally disarm it, and then back to our final showdown. They've wandered into, like, a hall of mirrors. I mean, there are mirrors around in, like, a storage capacity, but these are full-on carnival-sized mirrors, and suddenly Lamont is in all of them. Lamont then, somehow, causes all the mirrors to shatter. I'm telekinetic now, BT dubs. Khan wakes up in a mental hospital without his psychic powers, apparently having been given a lobotomy by the doctors there to save his life. Although we see that his doctor is an agent of the Shadow. And so our movie ends with Lamont and Margot mashing their faces together before he has to go off and says he'll see her later. She asks how he'll know where she is.
I'll know.
It's subtle, but I think it would have been better if he had actually just said, "The Shadow knows." Anyway, this movie is pretty good. The problem is that it could have been great. It's a fun movie, but what it lacks when compared to Batman is vulnerability. We see Bruce Wayne's more human side via his parents' death and how it still affects him, primarily in his romantic life. For Lamont in this movie, he can't be with Margot initially because her telepathy could expose his secret identity. For Bruce, he knows that the things he does are very dark and very driven by revenge and pain and whatnot, so he doesn't know if he can form that kind of romantic connection without exposing his innermost trauma. Or worse, move past it, a plot point somewhat explored in Batman Forever. Lamont tells Margot she can stay the night, that his mansion has guest rooms, but it's not quite the same thing as Bruce rarely using parts of his house because it's all a facade he puts on. Lamont fears he's just like Khan, but we don't really see anything that backs that up. He just feels bad about the terrible things he did, but his emotional range just doesn't ever hit the necessary pain and vulnerability with this idea. The closest we get is right after Margot reads his mind and learns of his darker past, but his tone and the way he carries himself throughout makes him feel kind of emotionless about said past. Like he's just kind of mildly bummed by it rather than it being something torturing him. We don't see him struggling to keep his darker impulses in check or anything. He attacks criminals and mooks, kills them, and just moves on. If he had a moral line that he kept getting close to crossing, that'd be something, but instead it's just something they say is a thing when it isn't. Maybe the idea of him not letting Khan die, but just removing his psychic abilities is supposed to suggest he changed his ways, but it doesn't come across that way. He doesn't feel like he's really undergone an arc that would bring him to that moment. It's just suddenly he figures out how to do a bunch of stuff he couldn't before. But like I said, that's really the big problem of the film, but the rest of it is awesome. It nails atmosphere and the look of the Shadow is great. Hell, the best scenes in the movie really are when he's in the full costume and doing his thing. And while the invisibility gives him a great advantage, we see time and again that it doesn't make him invulnerable or infallible. He gets into fight scenes where he gets hurt and fails just as much as he manages to kick ass. It's a problem in some movies and fight scenes where you can make a character so overpowered and badass that it becomes kind of boring when it feels like there aren't any stakes in the combat. Thus, it's always better to have a back and forth. Creates more tension and excitement, especially when the hero wins through in the end. But yeah, aside from the arc, the only other issue, like I said, is the opening section. Feels tacked on, especially with the expository crawl at that point, but the rest of it works so well that I'm able to forgive it. Fun flick, worth a watch. Next time, we're going to take a brief break from Patreon-sponsored stuff, since the next one of those is a video game review, and it's coming at a bad time for me to collect footage for it. Instead, let's finally revisit some series we've neglected with another issue of Godzilla, Kingdom of Monsters.
I dreamed I tore all the skin off my face and was somebody else underneath.
You have problems.
Hello my friends, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon, buy merch from the store envy link in the description, or check out the t-shirts available from Fourth Wall. Thanks for watching.